On October 14, 2023, a narrow portion of the United States is going to experience what's known as an annular eclipse. You might have heard it called the Ring of Fire. And we aren't going to see the Ring of Fire in northwest Arkansas or the River Valley, but I'll give you an illustration on why an eclipse occurs. Just wanted to let you know exactly what causes an annular eclipse. So you have to have the sun, you have to have the earth, and of course, in between the two, we've got the moon. And this is when an eclipse occurs, when the moon is in between the sun and the earth, because the moon is blocking the sunlight to the earth. This is called a new moon, where the sun's rays are shining down on the moon and all of that sunlit side is facing away from the earth. But we also have to, in order to figure out how an eclipse occurs, look at the orbit of the moon, because it's real unique and there's something very special about it. It's not a perfect circle. In fact, this is known as an ellipse. An ellipse is an elongated oval. Sometimes it's closer to the earth and sometimes it's a little bit farther. There's also another unique feature with the orbit. It's actually at about a 5-degree tilt. So what this means is every time we have a new moon, we don't see an eclipse because it's not on the ecliptical plane, and sometimes it lines up perfectly. That's when you have a solar eclipse. Now with an annular eclipse, there's also an importance to how close the moon is to the earth. Sometimes it's at perigee. This is known as a supermoon. This is where it's at its closest point. But on the other side, you've got what's called apogee. Apogee is its farthest point away from the earth, and this is where it's a little smaller, and it's known as a micromoon. This is where you have an annular eclipse, where the moon isn't quite big enough to cover up the entire sun. So that's how you get the Ring of Fire. And you can clearly see when we look at the top view that the moon's orbit, sometimes it's closer to the earth, sometimes it's farther. So let's get back to our eclipse illustration. We've again got the sun, we've got the moon, we've got the earth. Now this is clearly not to scale. I think you can tell that because the sun is huge. In fact, the sun is 400 times the size of the moon, but at the same time, it's 400 times as far away from the moon. So that's why it appears as the same size in an eclipse. Now, I want to give you an illustration on an eclipse. So you got the sun's rays shining down on the earth, but the moon's blocking it, and you get two types of shadows. You get one shadow that's known as the penumbra. The penumbra is the partial eclipse, and the partial eclipse is where we're going to see in northwest Arkansas in the River Valley, where part of the moon is blocking the sun. In the real special case, and these are spectacular, you get a total solar eclipse when you're in the umbra. And that umbra right here is where all of the sunlight is being blocked. It's a very narrow band that makes it to the earth. But because the moon is a little smaller than a supermoon, when it's bigger and covers up the entire sun, you get what's called the antumbra. The antumbra is going to be moving across the southwestern United States, and that is where you have your annular eclipse. So there's an illustration about the eclipse, but you might be wondering, hey, what does this look like when you're on the earth if you're in that path of annularity? Well, this is what it looks like, the Ring of Fire, where everything starts getting a little bit dark, but not as dark as a total solar eclipse because the moon is not close enough to the earth to cover the entire sun. Now, I want to take a look at the path here just to give you an illustration what we're going to see in northwest Arkansas. And so as we take a look at the annular eclipse path around noon, it is going to be moving through Texas and New Mexico. We see about 67–68% of the moon being blocked just before noon. And so that's going to be our max eclipse. Now, if we look at the entire path of annularity, this is going to be making its way across the western United States, continuing south into Texas, and making its way through Corpus Christi, San Antonio. We'll have an article to let you know all about the best places to view this eclipse. And of course, it all depends on cloud cover too, because if there's clouds, then you clearly won't see the eclipse. Now, this is just an appetizer, just a taste to the total solar eclipse that's going to occur April 8th of 2024. Mark your calendars because you do not want to miss it and you want to be in that path of totality. And so that's a little bit more about how an annular eclipse occurs.